Hello, lovelies. Today I'd like to talk to you about a rather delicate and quite boring subject, but it is very important and very impactful to British creators that you might know in small spaces like RPG publishing, like independent self-publishing. It will also negatively affect a lot of people who are sellers on places like eBay or Vinted or Etsy or any of the many Etsy replacements that have sprung up. So it's important, so I crave your indulgence, please. And if you can't be bothered to listen, please go and watch one of my other recent videos instead. So yeah, this is a delicate subject. It requires some empathy and some understanding, and I am particularly appealing to the more right-wing members of my audience to please hear this out, have that, no, not empathy, have that compassion and understanding. Here in the UK, new legislation just came into force which will allow HMRC, His Majesty's Revenue and Customs, to receive information on income that you might be making from your side hustles, basically. Now, no complete list of sites seems to exist that will be involved in this, but it definitely includes things like eBay, Vinted, and less controversially, things like Airbnb or driver services like Uber. You have an allowance that amounts to something like £83 a month that you're allowed to make over and above what you might be making from your normal job or whatever. You're allowed more if you're selling items for less than you bought them for, so provided you're not making a profit, it's okay. But who's going to keep receipts of all the old sweaters and things that they bought, you know? But after any of that, you are taxable and /or prosecutable. Now, on paper, this doesn't seem like such a terrible thing necessarily, right? If you're making money, you should be paying your taxes on the money that you're making, right? I mean, it will stick in people's craw somewhat to know that, you know, big companies like Vodafone, Amazon, Google aren't paying the billions that they owe in taxes, and that the government is going after, you know, small, sole trader, side hustle businesses rather than the big dogs. But, you know, you should be paying your taxes, right? Yeah, you should. But the problem with this is that these kind of under-the-counter, cash-in-hand businesses are all that keep a lot of people going, particularly people on welfare benefits. Because those are insufficient to live in many areas of the country and to have any kind of life worth living, or to have the capacity to save up any sort of amount of money for emergencies, like being thrown out of wherever it is that you're renting, or a problem with the car, or a problem with the house, or dental treatment, because it's very hard to get an NHS dentist these days, you know. And this crackdown on side hustles is also occurring just as fuel prices are being ratcheted up again, and in the midst of an ongoing cost of living crisis, in which a lot of people have turned to side hustles in order to make ends meet. So this may be technically illegal to earn over a certain amount of money, but a lot of people on the margins, the disabled, state pensioners, the jobless, rely on this sort of grey market income in order to get by. And these days we're moving to a cashless society, and digital economics is convenient, but it's also easily traceable compared to cash. So a lot of people are suddenly going to be a lot worse off, and this is going to cause even more deprivation than we're already experiencing. So that's one aspect of what's going on. That is already in force from the 1st of January. But it gets worse, because there are plans, even worse plans, to allow the DWP, the Department of Work and Pensions, and HMRC to snoop directly on people's bank accounts and to take them off universal credit or welfare payments based upon the savings that they find there, and that is capped at around £16,000, which sounds like a lot, but isn't, again, if you consider the cost of crises, emergency repairs, funerals, scratching together a deposit and monthly rent if you live in one of the cities in the UK and so on. It's not as much money as it sounds. So they can already go after bank accounts if they have cause for suspicion, but this will allow them to do it just as a matter of course, without needing to go through the stages to show that there is a reason to snoop on people's bank accounts. And again, this is mostly going to affect the disabled, state pensioners, the jobless, people who to a very large extent rely on this grey market income to supplement their meagre income that they get from benefits. So I am somewhat disabled. I get certain payments, but this doesn't particularly directly affect me. But the communities that I'm involved in, particularly adult workers, independent business people in games and publishing and so on, this will affect them. So there are some recommendations that I have. If you are an independent publisher, like me, my benefits are meant to supplement a working income, so this doesn't affect me particularly, but other people it will. And things you can do to make things better and easier for people in this sort of situation. You should have the capacity to pay freelancers and contributors in a staggered manner so as not to trip these pitfalls that exist. So you should be able to stagger payments or hold payments in escrow for people and pay them out in bits and pieces rather than as lump sums, which are more likely to trigger the issue. If you are a small scale creator in this sort of situation, it's worth having a separate business account, because it should be that it is your personal savings that need to exceed £16,000, and that's where the problem should lie. That's what should trip the issue. If you keep your business money separate and keep track of it, then it is only the money that you pay yourself from that business account that will potentially be an issue. So that's what you need to look out for. So it is worth setting up a separate business account. It's a hassle, it's annoying, but it does help keep your finances separate. It's also risky, but you should consider keeping money in transitory places like PayPal rather than cashing it all out straight away. Just be careful with that. PayPal has a bit of a reputation. And if you can, as a purchaser, as a buyer, and if the people you support do conventions and so on, it would probably really help a lot of these small creators in this sort of situation if you turn up in person with cash and pay in cash, so that they can avoid the whole issue of being snooped on. And again, I appreciate that nobody particularly likes welfare fraud. This is a grey area, but practical circumstances, material circumstances on the ground mean that people need this grey market income. They need to be able to avoid tax and to avoid having their benefits withdrawn, certainly, because it can take months and months, even years, to get those benefit payments back. and there is no guarantee that in the meantime you're going to continue to make the kind of income that caused it to be switched off in the first place. So, yeah. The second half of all this, the proposal to snoop on anybody and everybody's bank accounts if they're in receipt of benefits, that may not happen. It seems likely, or almost certain, that the Conservatives will be pushed out at the next election in the UK, which should be at some point this year. I think the latest it can be is early next year. And Labour may choose not to pass this legislation, or if it goes through, to repeal this legislation, or not just not to enforce it, not to do it. But I wouldn't bet on it, because Labour has taken the new Labour route of being fairly Tory light. So we'll see. Now, I appreciate that's all rather boring, and, you know, benefit cheating, welfare fraud, tax avoidance, and things. These are all emotive subjects. But here we're not talking about people like Elon Musk or Jeff Bezos. We're talking about, you know, Dave down the street who's in a wheelchair and, you know, buys cheap clothing at market to sell on eBay, right? Dave in a wheelchair deserves a break, I think, and all this energy and effort should be spent on pursuing the wealthy people that owe billions, not the poor people that owe a tenner here and there that maybe allows them to get a takeout once a month, right? Something to think about. Sang.
Aren't you a little tired of so-called horror media about shiny, sparkly, angsty, whiny monsters? I know I am, and that's why I created Actual Fucking Monsters, where you will play an actual fucking monster doing horrible and monstrous things and being tracked down and killed for it. Buy now at DriveThruRPG, post-mort.com or lulu.com.
I can get you anything you want. You just have to talk to me. Talk to me. Talk to me. Talk to me. I'm your priest. I'm your shrink. I'm your main connection to the switchboard of souls. I'm the magic man. The Santa Claus of the subconscious. You say it. You even think it. You can have it.